What's a scientific fact that creeps you out? Caterpillars turn completely into goo in their cocoon, and then become a butterfly. Edit. This blew up. According to my inbox, many people have been creeped out. A good day's work. The brain can play tricks on you when you look at a clock and the second hand seems to freeze for a moment. Your brain is actually generating a false memory, and your perception of time stretches slightly backward. This effect is called chronostasis. https://n wikipedia.org/wiki/chronostasis. That so many vegetables came from the same plant: broccoli, kale, kohlrabi, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, etc. There are, botanically speaking, the same species. Humans have just bred them to emphasize different traits: buds, leaves, tubers. Imagine if humans were as genetically flexible. Imagine a person walking around with giant toes, but otherwise normal. Actually, plant genetics in general is a weird world. Because of some pesticides used, roaches won't go anywhere near a meth lab. Parasites can live anywhere inside of you, for years unnoticed. A simple migraine could be a tapeworm crawling in your brain, causing damage. Your eyes begin to blur frequently and you don't know why, and it's not getting better. Losing weight and having diarrhea, but it's not a stomach bug. Well, I guess it is. You are having a difficult time catching your breath and your chest doesn't feel right. It could just be some parasite hanging out, using you. Some mutations of just one letter in the DNA code can kill the fetus almost instantly, but some people live and have a seemingly healthy life while missing a whole chromosome. If you understand anything about biology, that's completely wild. Your brain literally creates your own reality and your senses and body just go along with it. A fever is your body way of saying, we don't negotiate with terrorists. We either destroy the enemy or we die with them. You get and cure cancer in your own body thousands of times a day. The first AI that can successfully pass the Turing test would be able to pretend that it couldn't. That as the permafrost melts, a lot of locked up methane will be released, and microorganisms there will wake up and do their jobs, breaking down organic matter, and release more methane and greenhouse gases. A gamma ray burst could wipe out all life on Earth instantly with no warning. Your brain is making decisions before you are even aware of the decisions it has made. It also makes decisions based off of learned behavior and you just go along with it. The sudden urge to jump off of a very high height. You can be physically and mentally stable to the greatest degree and still have this feeling when it's such a high height. Doctors/scientists are barely keeping up with the influenza virus. It keeps on mutating rapidly. It really wants to get inside you. Just how big of a number a mole actually is. Thinking about how breathing and lungs work freaks me out. Once I start thinking about it, all I can think about is my breathing, and then I have to force myself to stop thinking about it. Most of the water on the earth will rain down at some point. The creepy fact about this is that the human body is 60% water, meaning that at some point the same water that runs throughout your body, the one on your blood, bones, brain, etc., will rain down at some point. Obligate simplicide. In some species of animals, multiple offspring are born but only one is actually raised by the mother. The others are born only as backup in case the firstborn doesn't survive. When the firstborn is fine, which is the typical case, it kills the others. There is more microorganisms on your body than people in Earth. That the only reason you are a functional human is that your DNA is so tangled that entire sections can't get decoded and screw it out. Edit. Turns out I must have majorly misunderstood something, as this is very wrong. Thanks Reddit. But as far as I'm aware, the brain fact is true though. When the Titanic sank, none of the shoes decomposed, so there's ton of shoes at the bottom of the ocean. After being decapitated, there's still few seconds of brain activity that happen before you snuff out. Spider webs were used as bandages in ancient times. We know more about the moon than we do our own oceans. It's rare, but you can die at any moment for literally no reason at all. Your body just stops working. That there are little crab-like things crawling on your face. Years ago I saw an episode of Monsters Inside Me where this guy was doing something outside and a fly flew into his eye. It only made contact for about a microsecond, but it was enough time for it to lay eggs. After they hatched, they started eating his eye from the inside and he was starting to go blind until a doctor figured out what was wrong. Just imagine that, getting your eye eaten from the inside and losing your sight, all because a fly very briefly made contact with you. Ever since I learned about this, I get really paranoid when there's a fly around my face because of the fact that this could possibly happen to me. A buddy of mine is a pilot for a major airline. In top 3 of airlines. I asked him exactly how much flying are you actually doing during a flight? Like how much are you controlling the plane? He said about 5%, 95% of a flight is completely automated. He said Hess involved a little bit on takeoff and on the landing, but for the most part the plane flies itself unless something major happens in flight. There is something called the squeeze, where when people had old scuba suits with tubes, you could actually get sucked into that tube if the pressure was off. You are literally shredded through your own breathing tube. Apparently, the following statement creeps others out. Your bones are wet. The sun will eventually die out. The average number of legs for the human population is less than 2. A doctor once told me, on average every human has 3 anomalies. Not all are visible. Your skeleton isn't inside of you, you're inside of your skeleton. The mantis shrimp can see colors that our eyes aren't capable of perceiving. Think about that. What else are we just not capable of sensing? If you believe strongly enough that you have been cursed, your brain can shut itself off entirely in severe cases. The psychological term for it is voodoo death syndrome. It's just the fact you can literally think yourself to death that unsettles me so. If the magnetism between protons and electrons weakens a tiny bit, matter disintegrates like a Thanos snapping his fingers. Due to relativity, it is impossible to measure the speed of light in a straight line. The only way we have measured it is by round trip with mirrors. For all we know, it could be instantaneous going one way, and half the speed of light in the other, and it would be impossible to tell. That just because a planet has the properties to sustain life, the probability of life evolving are still extremely rare, exponentially so for intelligent life. There are an estimated 36 intelligent civilizations in the Milky Way, but they are so far away we wouldn't have had the chance to communicate with them. There is a supermassive star 7,600 light-years away named Eta Carinae. It is about 200 times the mass of our Sun. Its size is about the size of our entire solar system. It is 5 million times brighter than our Sun, and it is very near supernova. It might have already happened and the shock wave is on the way. It probably is far enough away to where it won't destroy our solar system, probably. That there is really no such thing as a permanent scientific fact. I could be drinking the same water that my extremely far relative drank back in like the 1800s. I had a professor in college who said that if you weren't terrified by the concept of entropy, you didn't fully understand it. I'm pretty sure scientific fact is a bit of an oxymoron. Science always leaves room for an improvement on a theory. That being said, where TF is the 95% of the mass of the universe at? Why can't we find it? Rogue black holes. There are black holes that just are floating around in space and potentially fucking up solar system just by passing through it. The grand scale and size of the universe never fails to instill Lovecraftian anxiety in me. Humans are bioluminescent, nothing to do with body temperature. We emit visible light that can be photographed in specific conditions. But, this light isn't visible to us, which makes it a strange thing to have evolved, and begs the question, what organisms is this light visible to, and why? We could be smashed from space at any time. The Earth formed, cooled and started existing. Then about 4 billion years ago, it was pelted by more space rocks until the surface melted again. The late heavy bombardment. If you rub garlic on your feet you can taste it. That all of the COVID-19 virus that exists, and has killed millions, would fit inside a Coke can. You can be convinced you committed a crime. You can also give false confessions. We don't have free will. We have free will, and every emotion and thought that comes up is not under our control. We can only control how we respond. Along with this, our brain also sets actions up before we even consciously think them, allowing neurologists to predict our actions before we even do them. When you go to get something from one room, or upstairs, and suddenly forget why you went in there, it's called a boundary event. Usually, if you go back to where you started, through the boundary, you'll remember it again. Literally everything that you know or feel or experience in total is just a series of electric impulses and nothing else. At the quantum level, there is no matter, only electrical charges. Matter is only energy of a specific temperature and frequency. Sea stars eject their stomachs to cover edible parts of their prey, begin digesting it externally, and then pull the partially digested prey into digestive glands to finish the job. Starfish feeding mechanism edited for continuity/grammar. Nothing will make you special because 1,000 years from now probably no one will know you. We only have solid knowledge on about 10 to 15% of the ocean. That the photons and electrons act differently when there is an observer. No one knows how anesthesia works. They know what it does but we don't know how. Very scary thought when going under the knife. There's no real reason that we, or any animal for that matter, have to process time at the speed at which we do. Intelligent species in other galaxies, solar systems, would very likely process time at an entirely different rate. How many other living things are on you and in you every second? The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. Air bubbles in your heart / the existence of tapeworms. Not so much as a fact but an observation. Viruses are both dead, alive, and inanimate all at the same time. We still don't know why or how they originally came into existence in the first place, and theoretically, the only possible function they serve in any species, especially humans, is solely to cap the population growth rate. Therefore, nature, in all its nihilistic behavior, made a thing to destroy life itself by making it a byproduct of too much life according to unexplained forces in nature. There is a fungus that turns ants into zombies, and when they die it will be in the best position to spread more of the spores. When a president declares a national state of emergency, the law prohibiting medical experiments on unwilling human subjects is suspended. Not so much creepy but cool, there is a planet that is estimated to be made up of diamonds due to the carbon on the planet. 55 Concrete E. NSFL warning. Male sea otters will occasionally drown female sea otters during the mating process. Lacking access to a female sea otter, they've been documented raping and drowning immature seals and keeping the corpse around for future fun times, at least until it gets too nasty to keep fucking it! Snopes has an article on the subject. Every day, we're being pulled closer and closer towards something we can't see. And you might think it's just Earth. It's not. All of the observable galaxies are moving towards it, which means the mass of this thing is so great that it outweighs multiple galaxies. Shudder. Any cosmological fact is actually scary. You know, we can randomly be in the path of a gamma burst, an asteroid or something else, and we would never see it coming. You might just go to sleep today and in the middle of the night scientists discover a gamma ray coming at us. Gone. The universe doesn't stop there, it continues. Our existence is less than a galactic blank. The universe expands and there will be a day that our planet will be floating alone and cold in darkness forever too. That 99% of all life that has ever existed has gone extinct. That we are just matter realizing itself. The only reason we're not walking on a living mattress made of spiders is that they compete for their food. We have the same atoms in us as 3,000 individuals who existed long before us, and have since died, decomposed, and consumed by us in the form of food. We have all been, somehow, thrust into consciousness. If all the muscles in your back clenched with force at the same time, they would shatter your spine. My balls hurt when I pee. The fact that bacteria in your gut can be more harmful than any flesh-eating virus. Violets secrete a chemical that causes you to forget what they smell like afterwards. You're essentially getting roofied every time you sniff one. A human can fit inside a whale penis. Flies take a dump every time they land. Internal structural failures. Sometimes you don't know about them until the structure catastrophically fails. This is probably more cool than creepy, but spider goats exist. There is this material called biosteel that is spider silk that comes from a goat. Basically someone put orb weaver DNA into a goat so that spider silk could be harvested from goat milk. Toddlers have all their adult teeth fully formed in cavities in their skull. When you smell a fart, you're actually breathing microscopic droplets of feces. The gases are odorless. Practically every surface where people live is covered in fecal bacteria.